Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Adubato. We welcome Christine Weydig, who is Director of the Office of Sustainability for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. Good to see you, Christine.
Nice to see you also, Steve. Thanks for taking the time to chat today.
Our pleasure. The Office of Sustainability, first of all, defines sustainability as it's defined at the Port Authority, and what does the office do?
Sustainability at the Port Authority means reducing our direct impacts on the environment and also working with our business partners to reduce their impacts on the environment. And that usually takes the form of reducing activities that generate greenhouse gas emissions, but it also includes reducing waste, reducing the use of single-use plastics, water conservation, really looking at all of the ways that we can be less impactful to our environment.
You know, we've had several experts on around climate change and get all kinds of answers to this. From your perspective, Christine, where are we with climate change? What's the progress we are making, and where are we falling behind?
Well, we are
ticking.
The clock is certainly ticking, and the reality is we are way behind schedule in terms of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. The good news is I believe a lot of organizations are really starting to take their role in climate change mitigation very seriously, in addition to climate change adaptation. Adaptation has always been a pretty tangible thing for most organizations, especially.
What does that mean? Climate change adaptation. I'm not sure what it means.
Adaptation. So climate change is happening already. We see it in all of the extreme weather events that are impacting our region. So Hurricane Sandy was a great example. It was really a wake-up call for the region, but we're seeing it in the forms of other extreme weather events. So nuisance flooding, heat, all sorts of things. And so adapting our businesses and our lives to be ready for climate change is really important. But I think what more organizations are doing now is they're realizing they have a role in mitigating climate change. So that means, what are we doing today through our actions to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions so that even if climate change is happening, the effects of it can be diminished, or we can avoid the most catastrophic impacts of climate change.
So
you see that? Yeah.
Good. No, finish your point. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I was going to say, you definitely see a lot more activity in terms of the commitments that organizations are making. So the Port Authority has a net zero by 2050 commitment for all scope.
Net zero what?
Greenhouse gas emissions.
By 2050. Here's the thing. The Port Authority has that goal, but the Port Authority, based on a compact from 1921 between New York and New Jersey, the states come together because there are a whole range of issues, you know, that do not know any borders, particularly infrastructure, transportation, and related issues. However, New Jersey has policies in this regard around sustainability. New York has policies. Connecticut does as well, as does the federal government. Question: how the heck do you make public policy around sustainability, greenhouse gas emissions, et cetera, climate change, when there are no borders?
There are no borders. It's a global problem. And in fact, we might be feeling the impacts disproportionately, or other parts of the world might feel it disproportionately. It won't be uniformly felt across the board. And climate scientists have a lot of sophisticated models, but the reality is it's a global problem, but we need collective action. So the states, both New York and New Jersey, are actually setting some really high standards for climate action. California, of course, does as well, but that doesn't mean that every state in the union is meeting those same objectives. And right now, the US federal government has established some targets, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the legislation and the policy to really hold everyone accountable are there. So your point is a really good one, which is, how are we all going to get there? And especially if there are certain countries or organizations or states that are committing to it and others that aren't, or maybe there are targets that are articulated but not a lot of action to back it up. But the fact is, and what we took very seriously at the Port Authority, was we need to catalyze that action. So if we all say, oh, it's a global problem and no single actor can do anything about it, then nothing will be done about it. But if our business partners, most of the major airlines have their own ambitious greenhouse gas reduction targets. You see a lot more of the shipping companies are doing the same, and their industry groups and a lot of big corporations are saying that they're going to net zero. So if everyone is making their commitments and the public is starting to hold these organizations accountable for showing the roadmap and the activities that will get them there, then it's through that collective action that we can have an impact. But right now we are behind schedule and there's a lot of work to be done, but we can't take a hands-off approach to this because there are no boundaries.
So let's be clear. For those who don't know what the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey actually does and why Christine's talking about this from a regional and global perspective. P.S. The Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, an underwriter of our infrastructure economic development activity programming. That being said, the Port Authority is responsible for the airports in the New York, New Jersey region. That includes Newark, Kennedy, LaGuardia, correct?
Yes.
They're responsible for the tunnels and bridges that connect to New York and New Jersey, the ports, and a whole range of other very important infrastructure projects in our region. So therefore, the Port Authority, I'm not going to say controls, but is responsible for a large amount of physical activity, particularly around transportation. Is that a fair assessment, Christine?
That is a fair assessment. And transportation right now is the single greatest sector of the economy that's contributing to climate change, and why we're taking very seriously our ability with our business partners. So we don't operate the aircraft in the end. Those are the airlines.
And P.S. Port Authority, Trans-Hudson, PATH, you're responsible for that as well.
We are responsible for that and the World Trade Center site. And yes, we have a very big footprint in very hard to abate sectors of the economy.
But real quick on this, with car sales, there's greater demand for cars than ever before. Gas prices are what they are, but if there's more demand for cars, electric cars can take a while. That being said, if there's more demand for cars, does that mitigate against the goals that you and your colleagues at the Port Authority, as well as Governor Murphy and the governor of New York and other places, in terms of reducing greenhouse gas effects when there's more demand for cars on the road?
There is more demand for cars on the road, but you see all of the major automakers are moving to all electric models. And some of them have already announced that they won't make internal combustion engine vehicles over the next handful of years. And so you are seeing that those cars are getting cleaner, but there also is more of a demand for personal vehicles, as you said. And until we really see the retirement of some of the combustion engine vehicles, then having more electric vehicles on the road won't necessarily be a solution to vehicle-related emissions. But we are, both the states of New York and New Jersey have adopted some rules around requiring that all new sales of on-road vehicles, both passenger vehicles and trucks, need to be electric within a very specific time frame. And so you will start to see that turnover that we need. But another thing that we all really need to be mindful of—
Real quick, Christine, I only have a few seconds, so go ahead and make your point.
The supply chain emissions. So all of the emissions that go into making those vehicles also needs to be considered.
Complex stuff. Christine, thank you so much for joining us and talking about an incredibly important issue that affects all of us. Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by Kane University, Investors Bank, Hackensack Meridian Health, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, New Jersey's Clean Energy Program, Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, and by Operating Engineers, Local 825. Promotional support provided by New Jersey Globe and by New Jersey Monthly.
With New Jersey's Clean Energy Program, there's so much to save. Free assistance for a more energy-efficient home. Win-win. Small business, big savings on your kitchen equipment. Delicious. Long-lasting and so efficient. Love it. Hi, I'm Chloe, your guide to clean energy. Keep at it, New Jersey. Gotta go. Learn more at njcleanenergy.com or call 1-866-NJ-SMART.